Well, I think it's so important to come to a realization and a profound understanding that you're doing something that's almost more important than you are. And that is that you are contributing to people's having a good time or being happy.
Ron, as a drummer on Long Island, as a young kid learning and being able to study this instrument, your name came up so many times from the groundwork performing that you did in the course of your life. This has been amazing to be able to listen to you, to study you, and to be a part of just a small little journey of me trying to steal ideas from you, which many drummers have done, whether you realize it or not. Stealing from Ron Tutt is a very, very important part of drumming education, so I thank you so much for being here.
Oh, pleasure, man.
Tell me where it began for you. Where did music step into your life?
It always has been there. My folks always had music around the house. We always sang songs on the way in the car, going places. And on the weekends when we get together with family, my cousin and I would pick up a couple of guitars and sing and play and all of that. And my mom had me in dancing lessons, tap dancing more specifically, probably about 3.5, 4 years old.
Interesting.
Yeah, I found in talking to other drummers, a lot of guys that we all know and love.
Our tap dancers?
Our tap dancers.
Oh my gosh, Buddy Rich was a great tap dancer.
Yeah.
Steve Gadd.
Yep.
Papa Joe Jones, Ed Thigpen, Jack DeJohnette, Roy Haynes.
Earl Palmer.
Yeah. Louis Bellson, so many guys. And many great tap dancers were also great drummers. Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, Gregory Hines. Absolutely. Boy, that's fantastic that you studied tap. And that was at an early age?
Really early. Yeah, like 3.5, 4 years old. She started me doing that. And I tapped until about 11 or so. And then it got around what the name of the dance studio I was studying was Twinkle Toes. and a boy going into junior high. It was...
So music was around you. Now you also played a little guitar at that time?
Yeah, ukulele, guitar, 4-string guitar, and then graduated to 6-string guitar playing with my cousin. And I started in the first grade playing a violin, but I took about a year of that and it sounded too much like a cat fight, so I couldn't stand it. Well, after the violin, I decided to go for something a little more adventuresome. So a friend of mine had a trumpet that his dad had put in the closet and thought he would never see again, and I showed it to me, and I had to have it. I think it was $40 or something like that. I figured a way to save money to do it, and I played that all the way up to about my next to last year in high school. Switched over to drums. I just took the trumpet in one day and traded it in an old funky drum set.
What sparked drums?
Well, being the dancer, I always felt like I was frustrated because I couldn't really express myself on the horn like I could, from just a pair of sticks beating on an old piece of cardboard or wood or whatever it was around the house, pots and pans and stuff. And I just felt that was more fulfilling to me.
Were there any drumming influences that you had at that time? Was there anyone that you were listening to?
Not any particular person at that time, other than the guys that were really guys like Gene Krupa.
Yeah.
It'd be hard not to turn on TV without being able to, at one time or another, see guys like that.
To be exposed to them, yeah.
Exposed to them. Yeah. But, later on, definitely. He was definitely a major influence along with Louis Bellson and of course, Buddy. But, and then later on, guys like Joe Murillo and on down the line, yeah.
Well, it's amazing how someone like Joe Murillo, Joe was one of my teachers for many, many years, and it's amazing how, just the finesse that he had, that you were now being exposed to small group jazz players, big band jazz players.
Yes.
You really had some interesting exposure that was coming to you.
That's true, and I went into the University of North Texas, which is one of the better music schools in the country.
Yeah.
And that's where I started, for the first time I ever played with a big band. Up to that point, I'd played a little country music and Dixieland. And then into big bands at North Texas, just fell into that. And the reason I could do that is because I could read, because I played trumpet, so I knew how to read.
What an advantage.
Yeah,
What a big advantage.
it was a big advantage to start out with. But I didn't have all the experience that a lot of guys my age that were playing, I was competing with.
But you had a feel for the instrument, and you were able to get around the drums, and you were just,
Yeah.
what a feeling to play in a big band, right? Just to have that sound of that big
It's
band.
marvelous. It really is. It's fantastic.
So you're playing with different, so did you start playing with different musicians and started expanding out to different styles of music?
Right. Even played in a symphony. That's one thing that I always have been careful to adhere to in my own personal philosophy and taste is to expose yourself to lots of different kinds of music. Test the water out everywhere you go, and see what sticks.
That's fantastic. So at this point now, there's a phrase that we have in the music industry that we've used for years, and it was just taking care of business. And when you go out to play your instrument, you got to take care of business. How did that all happen where next thing you know, you're being heard by Elvis, and then you're in the touring band?
I was working at a studio doing jingles, producing jingles, playing on the tracks, singing on the tracks, total in-house production. There were several of those around the country at that time. Dallas was a big hub for them. Memphis became kind of an offshoot and had offices in both areas, in Dallas and Memphis.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine had been contacted by the Memphis company, and he'd been down there about a year and called me up one day and said, we're looking for a drummer, and lyricist. I didn't know anything about writing jingles, so okay, I'll try. The thing is that I played all kinds of music in the jingle business because the radio stations were airing and choosing jingles that had all kinds of different modes and types, There's easy listening to classical to country to, on and on and on.
So you're doing jazz and Latin and
all
all different types
all
of
of
music.
it, yeah.
Wow. So at what point did you did the audition, you're doing these dates now, and
Well, that happened in '69. My friend that I was working together with had been contacted by Elvis's people, and he was putting a new band together for a big comeback tour thing or appearance in Vegas. And I got a call on a Friday night and said, can you get out here tomorrow night? We've been auditioning drummers for weeks now. We've tried everybody in town. And I said, well, airplanes, out there one day, drums, But I did it somehow, You could get away with those things back then. You can't do it now. I show up and it was a kind of a funny evening. The drummer that came in was a well-known drummer. He had done a lot of Motown West stuff. And the band started playing. Elvis came in. I was sitting in the back, all the way in the back. I had my drums set up because I got there early. The guy walks in and he sits down at my drums. And I heard him say something to somebody, and pretty soon I saw somebody point to the back, so he walks out halfway. Hey man, can I use your tubs? So what am I going to say? No, But so he plays, and everybody's reacting very positively, smiling like, hey, we finally found the guy. This is it. Well, that's it. That's all for now. We're fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody's putting their axes away in the cases and this and that. And my friend Larry Mahobrak, is the one I was referring to, goes over to Colonel Parker's table. He says, the guy you just bought a ticket for to bring him out here is back there. So Colonel Parker calls Elvis over, and I hear, hey Elvis, guys, we got one more guy to listen to. You can kind of see him like, oh man. So, we play a couple of songs, I can't even remember what. We immediately had a rapport, and we just kind of, like a jazz player would hear a line or a rhythm, you pick up on it and you move with it, and I did the same thing for Elvis. And I guess that's what made the difference, because they said, well, call us tomorrow and we'll let you know. And they said, you got the gig, so it worked out pretty good. And
Sure.
I guess that's my point, because I guess later on, years later, I've met DJ Fontana, and we talked about how playing with Elvis was like playing with a kind of like a stripper. He wanted you to feel and hit everything that he was, kick everything that he was doing, like you would maybe in a big band.
Yeah.
So I guess all those experiences paid off because it was a really well-rounded group in a sense that could play almost any style. And I went from that right away, recommended for the Mike Post Orchestra, the Andy Williams show.
And where was that? That show was where?
L.A.
In L.A. So
Yeah, and I moved to L.A.
you moved to L.A. Okay.
Yeah, which was my ultimate goal anyway.
And how much was Elvis touring at that time?
Not much at all.
Right.
Took a couple of years for that to start to go into fruition there.
So you get to L.A. now, so you're settled in L.A. and you're starting to work with musicians out there.
Yeah, joined a band, Jerry Sheff, their bass player, was with Elvis. And I joined a group called Delaney and Bonnie and Friends, which was great rock and roll, great Southern rock and roll gospel, really down-home stuff. That lasted about a year, and then Elvis decided to go back out again, and it would pick back up,
So you get the call back in L.A.
Yeah,
Elvis is going out.
Yeah.
Elvis was still based out of Memphis.
yeah, basically that was home for him.
Interesting. So how was that? How was it with the musicians and playing and the touring? I mean, the intensity of Elvis and just the greatness of it all. How was this to kind of take in mentally?
It was spectacular. He kept us on our toes because he'd just turn around and say, "Give me an E chord," or "Give me a B flat," whatever, and he'd just start singing. And he sang hundreds of songs, and we had to know them.
So you didn't know what he was going to call.
No.
But you had to be prepared.
That's right.
Boy, talk about preparation.
Preparation is very, very important.
Yeah.
And I guess that's really my point about the whole audition thing, because the two of the most major gigs I've done in my life were with Elvis and Neil Diamond on down in 81.
Yeah.
The preparation it took to be ready to walk in and sound like I'd been doing the drum parts for all my life.
Yeah.
I guess it's not only enough to do really, really well when you get a chance to play for somebody.
Yeah.
You got to be mentally prepared as well. You got to have all the preparations in order. In other words, not only just your chops because that's not what got it for you.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you have to be not only mentally prepared, you've got to be skilled from your instrument. You have to know your instrument really well.
Well, absolutely.
And you got to know all these tunes. So how did you, preparation, boy, this is such a great line, because that's kind of what, in these interviews with this next generation and future generations as they watch this, they have to understand what it means to prepare. So what did you do to prepare for these songs? It was a lot of listening, rehearsing on your own?
Listening to the tapes that had been previously done, and making notes to myself on a big legal pad. Each song, instead of writing out a rhythm section chart or a drum chart per se, I did if it had to be, difficult.
Right.
But anything I could do to just highlight notes for things that I could review in my own mind as I went through them.
So you made personal notes on your own.
Personal notes.
And then specific, drumistic notes, we'll call them, chart notes that you knew if you had a section. Boy, listening is difficult to do because you have to have, years ago it was a lot more difficult. Today, on your little phone, you can listen to thousands of songs.
Absolutely.
We had records years ago, so were you set up with a record player? How'd you listen to all this stuff?
Well, it was kind of in between records and cassettes.
Yeah.
Listening to both a lot.
Yeah, so you just kept on listening.
Yeah.
So you're with Neil, so you're still living in LA at this time. How'd you meet up with Neil Diamond?
Audition.
You
audition again.
Interesting.
I did a session with our bass player, my old longtime friend, Ronnie, who had been with the band for quite a while. We were doing a date in town, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and on a break, he came over and he says, "Keep it under your hat, but you're not going to be with Neil any longer, and your name has kind of come up in the hat," because I knew all the guys in the band.
Right.
And then I get this phone call, said, "Sure enough, they want you to come in and be available for so-and-so." Well, I'd already taken a 2-week gig with Garcia.
Jerry Garcia, yeah.
Yeah. And we were doing a thing around New York State, all the colleges up in northern part of the state up there. So here we are traveling in a trailer, which we never did with Garcia, but it gave me a perfect time to have headphones on and a cassette machine. I'm making notes for her. In the meantime, Neil started rehearsing with Hal Blaine. So he was our rehearsal drummer. And Neil said he would wait until I came back per their recommendation. So when it came time to play, the pressure was on.
The pressure is on because Neil Diamond waited for you.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That he would put everything on pause to wait for you to come in. So you came in, but again, it goes back to that preparation. What was it like that first time playing with Neil Diamond?
Pretty amazing. I was a nervous wreck, but there again, I was prepared. So I knew, well, this is the best I can do. You know, I can't do any better than this. With Elvis, the rehearsals are so lax and so, they'd go on for hours, you know, however long he felt like it, for lengths of time. Neil's stuff was much more, I would say, complicated.
Yeah, sure. So there was less flexibility with Neil's band as there was maybe with Elvis's.
Right.
Interesting. So that discipline of being on the road. Now you're traveling, you're hitting the road, you're going everywhere. What was it like traveling at that time? Was it, you guys were a close family of the musicians, right?
It develops into a close family.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be difficult until everybody gets used to everybody's little quirks, but you learn that that's the only way you can survive that kind of thing, is to be just like you do in a family. You have to overlook a lot of things that you would, if it was your own gig, that's one thing. And, it wasn't like the Ron Tutt band. It was, or I wasn't there as an individual virtuoso player. I'm still trying to function as a working musician.
But how you supported the music in all those times. And I'd study you with Elvis and Neil and with Jerry Garcia. We'd hear you playing. You always laid the groove in the pocket so clear. And whatever fill you played, it was exactly supportive of what had to happen at that moment.
I just always tried to be as musical a player as I could, because there again, that's what I was most attracted to. Having, blinding fast chops that's impressive.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're younger. But you learn that that's really not what it fulfills you as a player yourself, personally. It's being able to do whatever job you're there to do. For example, if you're doing a 1 hour jingle, you got to go do the best job you can for that 1 hour jingle, or a 3 hour show. It doesn't matter, You got to focus on what your responsibility to do is. And I had to play a lot of different styles. Say the difference between Garcia and Neil, where Garcia's was like a jazz gig.
Yeah.
Where everybody, songs have a head, and then everybody plays as much as they want, as long as they want to, and in and out, and that's about it. Some songs are easily 15 minutes long, and your normal pop song is, 3 minutes?
Yeah, 3 minutes,
4
minutes max.
3 more max, yeah. But I enjoyed the freedom that gave. Some of the guys in the Elvis band joined the hot band, the Emmylou Harris band, and they asked me to do it. I just thought a good opportunity to stretch out. And I love San Francisco anyway. So.
Beautiful city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great place to hang out.
Yeah. In playing, you're going from major act to major act to major act. I mean, how did you maintain the business side of it? Did you have to keep a book as far as what you were doing? I mean, you've got to have some business skills to be able to organize this.
There's two ways to go about it, and a little bit of both. One of the ways in LA at that time, strangely enough, required you to have an answering service, which consisted of people, usually women, that would sit behind their switchboard who couldn't think of the word.
Yeah.
And they had the heartbeat of everything from contractors to arrangers and who's available for so and so and so and so. And the lady that ran the one I had two answering services. They happened to like me for some reason and knew that I could get there pretty quickly. So when somebody was not showing up or blew the session or whatever, they'd recommend me. So being pretty close to Hollywood, I was living up in the hills. I could be there in 20, 30 minutes. So I think I got a lot of my work from guys who were having problems showing up for dates.
Yeah.
Because it's an ego-driven business, very much. Producers don't want guys that are not interested enough in their gig to show up on time. That usually means, like my friend from New York always says, train time. Means if you're not there at 10 o'clock, the train's gone.
That's right.
You know?
That's exactly right.
So that's the way the sessions had to be. That was one way. The other is to keep the book and keep it coordinated with, even if you're using an answering service, to make sure you got them, like a double check.
Yes, absolutely.
They're not there anymore. The industry has changed. But it's usually through contractors now.
So contractors would keep these women involved as far as what the schedules were, what they needed. They were at this major switchboard. They called them up. They had the name and list of musicians.
Yes.
And they contacted them to see who would be able to show up for the
Right.
gig.
They maybe have first, second, third call.
What an amazing time where the business was at that time.
It was really amazing.
What an exciting time to be a part of that.
Yeah.
In the core of the magic of what the music business was about. It has changed dramatically now.
Yes.
In a different world. And now with the internet and all the different things that are happening with that, how people are communicating on social media, it's a very, very different world.
It is, and it's a very individualized business right now because they're, again, private people that are, with Pro Tools in a basement studio.
Yeah.
And they're doing scoring and tracks, and, you almost have to be a programmer more than a musician. Not more than a musician, but as equal, if not more so.
Yeah. Is there any one performance that stands out that might have sparked something where maybe was your greatest lesson? Were there lessons to be learned when you were on the road? Anyone that stands out, that's something that just a performance someplace with someone that just was an eye-opener for you? What was that like?
Well, other than the magnitude of numbers that we'd run across every once in a while, first one we did was a big eye-opener with Elvis, was playing the Astrodome. It was 50,000 people, and at that time, that was a lot of folks.
Absolutely.
And then we went from that to play a New Year's Eve gig, it was 110,000 at the Pontiac Silverdome. Now, in the last few years, we did a gig with Neil at the Glastonbury Festival in England.
Which is 180,000 people. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it was just, it was wild to look out there and see that many. It looked like an attacking army, with all their posts and flags. And it was crazy. I mean, I'm making a joke of it, and you learn that no matter what happens on stage, because at that show, with all of that going on, somebody tripped an electrical wire, and we didn't have any sound. So King Harrison, our percussionist, and I just kept playing, and everybody just started clapping, and we played for several minutes until they figured it out and fixed it. You do that kind of stuff. You really are in this business part. No matter how you feel, you're going to go out there and play.
You got to give 100% every time.
I know.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty powerful that you have had these levels of experiences and you have really moved an industry forward, because those are big gigs. That's a big part of music history. It's absolutely fantastic. And just to have the Musicians Hall of Fame here in Nashville, that is an amazing museum of historical stuff, and you're in there, as with all that you have done, so it's amazing to witness that they've captured the history here in Nashville. But you really have been someone that has been steady, and you have been at the top of your game so many years of what you've done. In closing, what would you say to this next generation as far as any advice or motivation that they can use so they can attempt to achieve their dream in the music industry?
Well, I think it's so important to come to a realization, kind of get an understanding, and a profound understanding that you're doing something that is almost more important than you are. And that is that you are contributing to people's having a good time or being happy.
Yeah.
You can fight it all your life like Leonard Nimoy did You know, I am not Spock. I am not. And you can resent all of that, because we would resent people trying to get, we go into a hotel, people would try to talk to us because they're trying to get to Elvis.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, you know, all these, that is the nature of that part of. But on the other hand, I think it's important to realize that for a very short period of time in a person's life, whether it be a day or 2-hour concert or whatever it is, the music that you've played and contributed to and been involved with means a lot more to somebody than you even get an inkling of. I think that's what keeps me going.
Well, I'll tell you something. From my perspective of studying this instrument, you have reached me at a high level. And millions of other musicians that have seen those performances, that have witnessed it, that were inspired by it, and that will remember those performances for the rest of their lives. So you did just that. You brought great happiness and inspiration to all these people. That's the power of Ron Tutt.
Well, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of the sessions. Great job, Ron. Thank you so much.
Thank you.